Some of us do think in complete sentences. This doesn't mean we're any less inundated from the media with the feeling that any day could be our last. To translate that from English into English, you could say, I admire people who think in complete sentences, despite the fact that it involves investment in time in a world where we're constantly reminded that any day could be our last. Some of the people in the climate change movement are gorgeous people. Richard Menang is a good example. People with mindsets that bring grace and energy to what all of us are trying to do. But there's a thread of self defeatism that runs all through the climate change movement, up and down. It permeates everything. It makes progress reports toxic. I mean this from Antonio Guterres to Greta Thunberg, from Vanessa Nakate to the individuals being arrested on the streets and sentenced to inordinate time in prison. It's a lack of aptitude on the subject of where human rights connects with the celebrity superstate. I watched Extinction Rebellion and in their analysis of the Congress of the Parties number 27. And the themes were encouraging and disappointing in familiar ways. But when asked why was the Congress of the Parties held in Egypt, they neglected to mention that it's on the continent of Africa. They instead scoured the Android zone with the issue of human rights, which are indeed important, but not analyzing the relationship of human rights to the celebrity superstate is self defeating. It doesn't serve anyone's purpose. Not one leader is served by this failure. So I want to discuss a little bit of my insight into the movement, how long I've been around, and what my contributions have been. The reason I'm focusing this on myself is because I was used as a stage prop by celebrity management on behalf of the fossil fuel industry, who now have control of the climate change movement also as a stage prop. Yes, I'm talking about you, Ringo Starr. The climate change movement is self defeating in its loyalties. I began my efforts to understand, to bring up, to discuss with others the Earth Society mission in the 70s when I was a child and being treated very piteously. I want to discuss a little bit about the ventures of the University of Pittsburgh in the matter. University of Pittsburgh celebrated itself as the #1 philosophy school, and one of their key elements was to publicly, openly, and constantly mock ecology movements. They celebrated the Iran-Contra fiasco as brilliant diplomacy. They produced a suspected museum thief who was a speechwriter for Donald Trump. They tortured me nearly to death and poisoned me, left me ruined as a stage prop for their claim and the claim of Ringo Starr that prostituting someone as a snuff film operation in a matrix that illustrated what they were calling the defective nature of our approach to human ecology, which necessitated, yes, say it, genocide, was somehow a safety elixir from the nature of reality. And of course, I could hardly laugh when the Fernhalder Bridge collapsed under their jurisdiction while a bus full of commuters was on board. But it was typical. And it's typical of the climate change movement to neglect such a history. Preservation is the nature of ecology programs and cultural ecology. We need to preserve our awareness of one another. We need to collect the stories of the arrested. We need to avoid martyrdom by sticking together and being aware of one another's plight and limits of energy. The fact that the young are so involved in this is illustrated of a sad self-deception, not just of ageism, but of disability. It makes people who are dependent on the system as it is seem worthless. And it becomes an invitation to satire from the old realm of Nazi Germany, led by Ringo Starr. Now I'm going to make good on this claim. I'm going to convince you and help you understand what Ringo has done. One of his perpetrators is a woman named Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood is one of the most dishonorable felons on the face of the earth, a blot to the human race. Yet Ringo Starr and Margaret Atwood have a free hand in what they've done because they evoke what they call the spirit of John Lennon in the burglaries, murders, arsons of Penis Gaber. George Monbiot is covering for them. Now let me explain the truth of the situation with regard to me. A letter I wrote in high school to Leslie Sonetta Katz was taken as my own shame. It was taken as a trophy of feminist liberation to denounce that letter. It was taken as though I was standing up and standing for the long legacy of honor killings. Nothing could be further from the truth. They inverted what the letter said. I was in terrible suffering from an impacted neuroplasm that they knew about and knew I didn't. And they became obsessed. From a behavioral psychological point of view, one would simply say, did he hurt her? Is he going to hurt her? The answer, of course, was no and no. That would have been enough. But Yoko Ono had poisoned me as a child, and she wanted to ferret out the interior depths through degradation. They hired perverts, they used biologicals of the terror that they had impacted with an impacted neuroplasm. They didn't want to help anybody. They wanted to feast on sadism. And in order to justify feasting on sadism, they pretended they didn't know what they were doing. What honor is there? I'm asking you, I said I would prove this to every last feminist out there who has any sense, any dignity, any decency, who claims they have honor. What honor is there? What honor? In lying about a neurological injury that you have committed. In the words of Benetta Yoshimoto in her book, Am Rita, like the Rita Maid, Am the Walrus, it concealed the vibrations. Well, you can see them now. I pulled it to the surface through a horrifying ordeal of homelessness, which I was tortured. Well, what honor is there in that? See, I've proved it. You don't even have the honor to stand up for your own legitimacy as an individual. They said that I had poisoned the atmosphere around her virginity. She would go into the woods screaming, gonna rape, kill, pillage, and burn the babies. That was her. I didn't poison the atmosphere. She inundated me with temptation. That was her. I didn't poison the atmosphere. She left me still with, was it that I had a false idea of honor, that I made her virginity into something sacred and left her alone about it. They are horrifying ellipse of miasma of thinking, because they're out to kill a sizable percentage of the human race and justified by the ecology movement. This is perpetration. So what I'm saying is that when you operate in a parameter of concealment, which is what you're doing, then you are, what you're doing is self-defeating. What you need to do is get to the bottom of this snuff film business and expose and expel Ringo Starr, Peter Gabriel, and Margaret Atwood from your ranks for what they have done. You must make honest people, George Monbiot and Greta Thunberg, because they're far from honest in this matter. But the reason that what you're doing is self-defeating is perfectly clear from this situation, perfectly clear. In order to get the media to stop operating in a parameter of concealment, you have to sue them on the basis of the people's right to know. How can you do that when you're terrified of what people will find out about your movement, about its origins, about your ellipse in thinking and reasoning, and weird word uses hot wired in from Ringo Starr's crowd to depredate the idea that they are supermen, that they are gods, and in the end, they're the ones that matter. Look after yourselves. Look after the disabled in your ranks. Figure out what we need to guide our spaceship Earth to safety, and stop playing, you know, battlefield ethics of simple, normal processes of human behavior. They prostituted me with intent to kill. The Krokag Yoko Ono still has perpetrators following me. They've injured me. I probably have Parkinson's from things that they've done. Slaughtering blows to the head. I'm deaf from what they've done. She's simply doing this not because of it. She set up the storyline about the honor killing stuff. She's doing this to get revenge for Tokyo in World War II, and Lenin has given them a free hand. That's all this slasher business, all this nightmarish cruelty that's going on in our media world. Is Lenin's free hand. It's his spirit setting things right for Roger Waters, that psycho. They put freehand on the cover of a Gentle Giant record. Well, they illustrated the bondage that they held the rest of us in, because Lenin's spirit was freehand. It goes back to Bly Sanders, who lost an arm in World War I. The 1916 project is available at storychecksout.org. Storychecksout.org. He was from back in 1916. He was talking about the mysterious invisible arm of Ouspensky in the fourth dimension in media. The free hand of Lenin is chopping things down as it sees fit, because he pulled a Houdini for this con job. And all of you are accomplice in it. You can't even own up to the fact that it's the height of feminist dishonor to poison a child in the brain and then make them a laughing stock. You can't even face your own dishonor because you aren't intellectual enough to hold yourselves to a code of honesty and dignity. You're too whacked out with celebrity frenzies, with mania. And it's not going to work. It's hopeless. It's too self-defeating to have any potential to succeed. You're operating in a parameter of concealment yourselves.